Yes, hello, I'm Rita. I'm a Belgian who worked as an expat in Burundi for 6 years. I worked for Broeders van Liefde, Brothers of Charity, as a psychiatric nurse. Me and someone else from school who had just graduated went to Burundi and we helped building up the first psychiatric hospital of the country. We had a leading function, but we also worked in shifts for an easier integration. I lived and worked in Bujumbura, the capital of Burundi, near Lake Tanganyika. The land around the lake was very fruitful. So there were fresh young vegetables all year, such as tomatoes, carrots, beans, onions, and so on. The traditional meals consisted mostly out of kidney beans, which I have learned to eat there and I really like it. I still use them when I barbecue, but I use dried beans in salads. They rarely eat meat and I still don't eat a lot of meat out of habit. They made a sort of stew from meat, but they use 1 or 2 pieces of meat. The poor people only eat meat when there is a feast. Something else that I ate a lot were long brochettes with goat meat and roasted corn. Cassave was also something typical. It's a very rich vegetable, which they used to make a pat, which was hard labor. One of my favorite things were avocado. Sometimes I buy them here, but you can't really compare the taste. They are either not ripe enough or too bad here. I used it as chocolate or butter. I put it on my bread or ate it together with an omelette as my breakfast. But the vegetables were all right and there were a lot of fruits all year, such as mango, maracuja, which we know as a passion fruit. They have a lot of different sorts and now they sometimes sell some at the Colruyt. I really ate a lot of very good things and whenever I talk about it, it makes my mouth water. The woman there also made a sort of stew from bananas and it was very nutritious too. They also have other eating habits. We use plates and forks and so on, but they put everything in the middle of the table. Everyone washes their hands and then they eat from the scales, which is something you have to learn at first. The men eat first. As a European woman, I was allowed to start eating together with the men, but women and children had to wait until the men were finished before they could start eating. Yes, but not often. I received a letter every week from my mom, and I wrote one often too. Not every week, since there were some weeks that I was too busy, but it was at least every other week that I wrote one. And every Sunday afternoon there was a program where people could call and say some things to someone who lived in another country. So every Sunday my mom called the radio. That way I could hear her talk every week. That was really incredible. And whenever there was someone at our house, which was very often because we had a lot of visitors, they said, everyone quiet, Mama Rita is on the radio. That rarely happened, but what did happen was that the director, when there was some important holiday or opportunity to celebrate something, that he organized a feast in the center. Burundians always celebrate with drinks and something to eat. People usually came together in a huge circle and then they got something to drink and some rochettes. And of course, there was some traditional music at the end and they danced. But going out with colleagues wasn't really something they did. They didn't really meet up with colleagues outside of work. Yes, I was allowed to do a lot more than I would have been allowed here. Starting up the hospital, arranging and fully organizing it from beginning to end. My colleagues weren't fully educated concerning psychiatric diseases, so we also learned them a lot of things. Teaching someone syndromes isn't something we would be able to do in Belgium, of course. We also had to be more creative, since the resources were different. When we had an intravenous therapy, we couldn't hang it on pool. We had to build some sort of construction. Something typical for them was that people who were ill had a guardian with them. In our hospital it was different, but in the other hospitals they need a guardian because otherwise you wouldn't have anything to eat and you wouldn't get washed. The nurses there don't wash people. They are there to treat patients and give them medication. Not much. Of course, there were things I had to get used to. For example, when they say that they are going to be back around 7, they usually were back around 10 or later. It's also normal when people visit you that they stay for dinner. I was even surprised how quick people adapt to certain situations. I still remember the night when it happened in October. Normally, that's the start of the rainy season, but it was late this year. And I was laying in my bed and suddenly I heard rumble. I thought, phew, finally the storm is there and it's going to start raining. But my husband recognized the noise and said, "That's not a storm, those are gunshots." It was the assault on the presidential house where the Hutu leader lived. In the beginning I was very scared. I had moved myself in the hallway with a mattress and something to eat and drink, since it was the only place in the house without windows. But you can't keep that up. I sustained it for a week or something. Then it's really incredible how fast people adapt. After a while, I listened and heard them shoot in a certain district, and my work was in another district, so I went to my work to see how it was there to give the patients their medication. There were times when the shooting didn't stay at one place, of course, and it happened that I could hear the bullets ricochet on the roof. Then I obviously crawled under my desk. When that happened, the director came to get me and took me to his office until it calmed down. Then I went home waiting for the next day to see how it would be, if there were shootings and if I could go to work or not. There also were nurses who lived very close to the center and who tried to at least give the patients their medication. I stayed in Burundi until June 1994. The last straw that broke the camel's back was when the boyfriend from a friend, a Flemish one, got killed. When I came back to Belgium after almost 6 years, I had more trouble to adapt. I had some fear for working again in Belgium since I had a lot of freedom in Burundi. I would have to work in a team again and I knew that the tempo would be higher. But I had a lot of luck since I had the opportunity to start in a night shift. That way I could get used to the Belgian speed again, but step by step, and get back into routine. If you have ever the opportunity to go abroad, it doesn't matter which country, you have to do it. I went to Norway for vacations, and even there you can see a lot of difference. So when you can work abroad, you should definitely do so.